Hey, so would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Greg Gunthorp from Gunthorp Farms in LaGrange, Indiana. We have a farm, processing plant, and a meat distribution company. We raise pigs, chickens, ducks, and turkeys and provide them to upscale restaurants in Chicago, Indianapolis, and Detroit.
You want to talk about how you kind of got started? What gave you this idea?
Sure. My family has raised pigs on pasture for at least 4 generations. In 1998, I sold pigs, live pigs, just like my family had in the past, only I sold them for less than what my grandpa sold them for in the Depression. And I was a little stubborn. I said I wasn't going to be the last Gunthorp to raise pigs. And at the same time, you could see in some of the magazines that it was starting to become trendy on both of the coasts in particular for people that wanted to know how their food was raised and how it was processed and how it was handled. And we were already raising pigs in the manner that I could see that people were starting to say that they wanted. And I thought, oh, this can't be too difficult. Let's get in the meat business.
How did you convince yourself your idea was an opportunity and not just an idea?
That's an excellent question. In my mind, I was always convinced that that it could work. That my family knew how to raise pigs, so that was no real issue. In my mind, I was convinced that the meat processing business wasn't too much of a challenge. And then I was also convinced that as the food industry became more consolidated, that there was going to be more and more consumers that were aware of that consolidation and what was happening with food, and that there would be 2 large groups of consumers that would end up evolving. And part of my belief that that was for real was that in the summer of 1988, when I graduated from high school, I spent 3 months in England and Scotland as an exchange student with the FFA, and I got to see that local foods and sustainable agriculture was at a place back then in England where we finally surpassed that here in the United States. But I could see a glimmer of that. Hey, this might end up happening in the United States, and this would be a good thing for Gunthorps to be involved in.
So do you think you were one of the first companies, at least around where you live, to do this and kind of start this from what you'd seen in London?
Yes, we were definitely one of the pioneers in the Midwest. You know, there were some operations already doing this, especially as you got closer to both coasts. But there really was no sizable operations in the Midwest delivering fresh, pasture-raised animals to the Chicago market. So I was definitely one of the pioneers in that.
Have you seen an increase recently since you started that?
Yeah, there's definitely been an increase. Lots more small farmers are getting into the direct marketing, both into the food service in the restaurants and also buying clubs, wholesaling to retailers, as well as direct to consumers.
So did you ever physically write down a business plan or do any sort of financial projection for this?
Somewhat, not as organized and detailed as I should have, but we definitely, I've done a fair amount of planning, a fair amount of budgeting. We didn't do a full-blown business plan when we started, and I should share with you a little bit of history of our progress through this, because it's been a long, steep learning curve. We were part owners of a processing plant up in Michigan, about 35 miles from the farm when we first started, because it didn't take me very long to realize that we could raise the animals and we could find the customer base for them, but the biggest issue is the access and availability of federally inspected processing so we could legally sell the animals across state lines. And we we were involved with that for about 3 years. Fell flat on our face. I couldn't manage a processing plant 35 miles from the farm and manage a farm and do sales and marketing in a distant city. But I was fortunate, looking back on it, that we had 3 other partners at the time, and they got to share my loss and that learning curve. So it really was a positive thing rather than a negative thing, because had we just went out and dug ground and built a processing plant on the farm, we in all likelihood would have went bankrupt. So.
How did you fund your business?
Probably we funded the business when we started in just about all the wrong ways, because as I said earlier, we're part owners of a plant up in Michigan, and in my mind I thought, oh, we'll get rid of our shares here and we'll go down to the farm and we'll build a plant, because once again I said I was stubborn enough that I was going to continue to raise pigs, and I also said I was stubborn enough I can figure out how to operate a USDA inspected processing plant. The bank had some different ideas, because I had only one track record in the processing business and it wasn't good, and I don't know why I didn't think about that, but no bank in their right mind is going to want to loan money to somebody that failed miserably at a processing venture just because they walk in without a really detailed business plan and just says, we're going to make this work. So we did all kinds of crazy things that I probably wouldn't recommend to anyone. We maxed out credit cards. We took out home improvement loans for materials to build stuff. Started out way too small with a facility that we've outgrown probably 5-6 different times. So but we made it work.
If you had an option, how would you do that differently?
If the funding was available, and back then the funding was more liberal than it is now, so the funding would definitely not be available, although the idea is not as far-fetched now as what it was, so maybe that would help. But if it had an option, we'd have built the plant probably 5-6 times bigger, if we'd had an option and we could have got the funding. And it would have all worked out because the sales went where they were supposed to, and the marketing worked. The role of a really good entrepreneur and a business person is to be able to look out into the future and see where you're going to go, and don't build it for what you're doing today, but you're building something for the future. And it's difficult, but it's essential.
What were some other challenges that you faced, and when you first started this and kind of changed the industry where you were, did you face challenges? Did people accept that right off the bat?
I think we faced several challenges. The regulatory hurdles of operating a USDA inspected processing plant has been a constant challenge. Meat processing is one of the highest regulated industries in the country. We operate 2 processing shifts, 1 slaughter shift. We get 3 inspectors a day, and every one of them has a little bit difference of opinion, and as our scale has grown, it becomes much easier to deal with all of their requests of both paperwork and what they want done. But when we first started, they got you jumping through hoops and everything imaginable, and it's an awful lot to try to gather in and disseminate and figure out how you're going to deal with all that. Our longest term challenge, and one that we still struggle with, has been carcass utilization. We have to find markets for every single piece of that animal. We can't just raise chickens for the chicken breast, and we can't just raise ducks for the legs. Our best way of solving that is to come up with a product line that we can put a larger portion of the animal in. We've just started developing a fully cooked pulled pork, and that's going to allow us to utilize our shoulders and hams off the pig so we can sell more pork chops and more bacons.
So how does Gunthorp Farms attract a majority portion of your customers?
Gunthorp Farms does the overwhelming majority of it attracting customers by word of mouth. We do no advertising, have never done advertising. You have a really good product and you take care of your customers and service, and do something that is different and unique, and I'm convinced that your customers are your best advertisement.
So if you could give an upcoming entrepreneur one piece of advice, what would that be?
My piece of advice that I would give to an upcoming entrepreneur is that long term you make your own luck. And the efforts that you're putting in today don't necessarily always give you immediate results, but regardless, you do everything to the best of your possible potential, and there truly are people out there that will care about that.